Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
With a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly, he's our dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Good Sunday morning. Lord, we're always in preacher pastor mode. Lord have mercy. Good Sunday afternoon, my brothers and sisters. I greet you from my office at the West Mitchell Street CME Church. I'm so glad that you have joined us for the second part of our Meet the Candidates for Bishop conversation. And as I was last Sunday, I am equally excited about the candidates, aspirants that we have today who will be sharing with me and with you as they talk about their vision for our church and why they pray and hope that you will see them as one of the next Episcopal candidates. In that light, I greet our College of Bishops. I greet our Senior Bishop, Lawrence L. Reddick, and Sister Wendy Jones Reddick, our distinguished college and their spouses, chaired by Bishop James B. Walker and Dr. Dolores Walker. And I greet my own bishop, Bishop Thomas Lewis Brown, and Dr. Louise Baker Brown, and am forever grateful to Dr. Teresa Duhart for her tremendous support of the show. Of course, today we have Reverend Dr. Charley Haynes, Reverend Dr. C. Kelby Heath, and Reverend Ricky Helton, and I'll be bringing them up in just a moment. But I also want to remind you, next Sunday, which is Memorial Day weekend, we will not have a show. Can I let you in on a little secret why we're not having a show? It is Memorial Day weekend, but I'm going to minister to my soul, SOUL, next week, and I'm going to a concert featuring Lakeside, the Ohio Players, Confunction, and Cameo. Don't judge me, but just jam with me. I'm looking forward to that 70s, 80s concert. But we will be back on June the 5th with our third conversation with Episcopal aspirants and candidates, Dr. Billy Holloway, Reverend Dr. Cassandra Keys, Reverend Paris Lester, and Reverend Marvin Liu. I'm looking forward to that. And then on June the 12th, my last conversation with the Episcopal aspirants, we have Reverend Manuel Henderson, Reverend Denise Anders Motters, Dr. Philip Washington, and Dr. Wayne Williams. And so they will close us out. And then the week leading to the General Conference, I'll be speaking with some of the bishops and some of the host committee, personnel, music staff. We're going to get a bird's eye view of what to expect when we go to Cincinnati. How many days are we from the General Conference? I'm so glad that you asked. We are 34 days from the General Conference, as if anybody's counting. But I'm sure these Episcopal aspirants are counting down because they have been traveling all across the land. Let me bring to you and introduce all three, and then we'll begin our first conversation. Delighted to have with us today the Reverend Dr. Charley Haynes, who is the pastor of the Beebe Memorial Cathedral CME Church in Oakland, California. Welcome, Dr. Haynes.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Skip Mason. This is such a pleasure and honor.
Thank you, my brother. We also have with us the Reverend Dr. Clarence Kelby Heath, pastor of the Carter Metropolitan CME Church in Fort Worth, Texas. He's in the 8th Episcopal District. Dr. Haynes is in the 9th Episcopal District. Dr. Heath, welcome. I think you're muted, my brother, but you're muted. Unmute yourself.
I believe I just unmuted.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Good. Well, look, thank you for having me to participate. We know this is an important time for us in the church. And just a quick shout out to our high school, college graduates, and whatever they're doing. Hey, we know a lot of families and other people out celebrating and graduations today as well. So thank you for doing this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. And last but certainly not least, let me welcome the Reverend Dr. Ricky Helton, the pastor of the Israel Metropolitan CME Church in Washington, D.C., and that's located in the 7th Episcopal District. Welcome, Dr. Helton.
Good afternoon, Dr. Skip Mason. It is so good to be here today. We have set aside this time for such a time as this, and I'm looking forward to responding with you and with the other listeners today. May God bless each and every person. God bless.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very much. I'm going to put Dr. Helton and Dr. Heath in the green room and spend a little time with Dr. Haynes. But before we begin, let me just share this very brief clip.
Hello, I am Dr. Charley Haynes Jr., and I'm offering myself to serve our Christian Methodist Episcopal Church in the office of bishop. My life's journey has called me to this moment where I believe we can strengthen tradition while activating a new direction, stand for our church's next generation. In my 3 decades in ministry and nearly a quarter-century of pastoral excellence, I've been able to continuously strengthen our traditions by developing and growing 3 CME churches and building the Curry Temple CME Church, Compton, California. It has been since 2003 where I have had the privilege to serve as the senior pastor of Beebe Memorial Cathedral CME in Oakland. I need you to stand with me in 2022. I want your vote and your prayers to be the 64th bishop of the CME Church. May God bless you and may God keep you is my prayer.
Thank you. Wanted to share that, and I have an intro video for all of the candidates, but we're going to jump right into it. And what I want to do, Dr. Haynes, because we know all of you, we want to spend time talking about the future of our church.
Yes.
And what you, as an aspirant hoping to be elected as bishop, what do you bring to the bench? Why now, and why you?
Well, all of that is not only a great segue into really just opening up the hearts and eyes and ears of those who want to know more about me. But why now? I've served our church for 31 years in ministry. I've pastored almost 26 years of those 31 years of ministry. I've pastored 3 churches in 2 Episcopal districts, the 3rd Episcopal District and 2 in the 9th Episcopal District. I come to the table by God's grace with a lot of experience, whether it's been from social justice, whether it's been in the boardroom, whether it's been in the connectional church. I've been active, involved, and I've tried to be a champion of demonstrating what God can do through the life of the local church by leadership, by exposure. Just to give a couple of examples, I've chaired the Oakland African American Chamber of Commerce in Oakland, where I have served that position more than 4.5 years. When I got the organization, we were fledgling, having a burn rate, meaning our income was running out within 6 months. And by God's grace, in 2.5 years, with partnerships and collaborative leadership, which is one of the things that I will bring to the College of Bishops, the skill set of collaborative leadership, we were able to take that fledgling negative organization and put it back into the positive, over $250,000 of memberships growing. And not only that, but partnerships that was not only with corporate, but also nonprofits and small businesses. I served as president of National Action Network Oakland, where we championed many of our causes around social justice. You remember several individuals during that time that have either fallen slain to hate or fallen slain to bias. We were on the forefront, in the fields, on the streets, leading the causes around that, along with the Reverend Al Sharpton. In addition to that, we spent time growing our church. At Beebe Memorial Cathedral, you've heard this before, we grew from 81 members to 3,400 members that we have physical and tangible on the roll. We still, even in the pandemic, have a healthy congregation. And for the last 5 years, our budget has grown by 1 to 2% every year. We currently have a budget more than $1.25 million that we raised. When I got there, it was $227,000. God has blessed me not only to have the exposure as a pastor, but to serve our church on the connectional level. I've served as vice chair, as secretary of the Committee of Finance for the General Connectional Board. It was a part of our plan, a part of our agenda to make sure that our churches remain healthy by keeping our budget balanced and keeping it almost at a nominal growth. We've done that. It was during our tenure that one of the years our budget decreased. And then we passed that on back to the local churches through the regions. It's in that role that I've also served as a national signatory at the connectional level. I've served as regional administrator to now 4 bishops. I've served as bursar. I've served as an administrative assistant along my career to 3 presiding elders. I've given my life to the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And because of that, I've been able to position myself. And I feel that God has called me to this position. I'm doing very well. I thank God for the blessing and the growth. But God said, this was not given to you to keep it for yourself. But you have to now open yourself up to surrender to his call and his will, to not only pour back into the next generation of pastors and leaders, but to help the church become vibrant, thriving, and growing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to jump right into questions which have come from our wonderful members of our church and delegates.
Yes.
And so let's look at this particular question that I am going to put on the screen. What are your thoughts on consolidation when it comes to several small, struggling congregations? I guess, what will you do if you are a bishop as it relates to this thinking and thought?
So this is something that's time immemorial. We've seen it happen on several levels, in particular the United Methodist Church, where they've consolidated churches and made churches stronger. We must understand that before we go in with the knife trying to do surgery, we must assess the health of the body. That means that there are some local churches that have history, that have context. Many of them have come out of each other and don't want to go back. So before we jump right in on the consolidation of churches, we have to assess its history. We have to assess the health of the church. And then we have to assess the willingness of having a new pastor with a new vision who can work the church through those times. Anytime you move, and this is something that we could talk about in another conversation, but anytime there's a major move, there's a death occurs. So when we talk about consolidation of churches, we have to deal with the death. How do we help churches grieve to end one phase of their lives so that they can have a brand new life in the context of another church? I am for consolidation of churches, but with careful planning, with spiritual discernment, and ultimately with the buy-in of the people who make up those congregations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've gotten a number of questions regarding, I'm sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yeah. I said good.
All right,
yeah.
Great. We've gotten a number of questions as it relates to our young people in our church. And I think this one may sort of consolidate a number of questions. It reads, younger members of the church feel as though they have no voice within the church. If elected, what plans do you have to remedy that situation?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, and I empathize with those who have that experience. I would say my experience is very different. In my church, for example, many of our leaders that are stewards, trustees, leading music ministry, making decisions in our church are young adults. They started at 20 and 21 because I heard this one wise man say that people will be what they see. If you want to have a younger church, you have to put people in leadership that are qualified. Watch this now, not by their age, but by their skill set, their giftings, and their experience. I've learned, and this is one of the levels of how we grew Beebe Memorial Cathedral. We targeted the young adult because we recognize that if we can attract the young adult to our church, we not only receive their children, we not only receive their children, but we receive their parents and their grandparents. And ultimately, you get the whole family. I could say on the average age of our church, and I'm blessed, when we first started, it was the average age was 71. Now our average age is 37 and went up 3 years. It used to be 34, which means that the most of our nucleus of our church are young adults. And what that means is that you have to take the time to mentor, coach, and attract and find out what the interests and needs are, and then begin to minister and serve those needs. Once you do that, then you will not only attract, but you retain and you'll keep those who are engaged in your ministry, and not only in your ministry, but in your church.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a question dealing with assessments, and I'm assuming apportionments. What is your realistic plan, Dr. Haynes, on assessments, especially for those churches who for years have declined in their membership?
Yeah, well, one of the things that is part of my platform that I believe that our church is not only ready, but need to do right now, that we need a development officer, a person who is skilled in not only garnering grants, not only garnering funds that we can put a part of an endowment, that we have to learn that there must be several income streams to do ministry today. That if we're trying to still do ministry with just over the plate, and with those give on the place on the back of those who have limited and restricted incomes, we're setting ourselves up for failure. We have to be biblical in our giving and our stewardship. And just like the Tigris River that has multiple streams that come out, our church has the capacity to have multiple streams. Let me just use as an example. During this pandemic, I knew that there'll be several individuals that could not give or did not have capacity, but we've been blessed over this last year that we received $375,000 in grants and funding, not only to do ministry, but to serve our community. What does that do? When you receive grants and other funds, it frees up other funds to take care of assessments. We have to really look at assessments not as something that's evil, but something that's a part of our responsibility and duty to keep not only our connectional church healthy, but push it back into a position where the leadership can pour all the way down to the local church to give it what it needs to not only be thriving, but be missional and focused on kingdom.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So this is a two-part question, Dr. Haynes. Is the bishop in the CME church the pastor's pastor? Why or why not? And then the second part of that, if the bishop is the pastor's pastor and you are elected, please explain your plan for guiding your pastors to spiritual, emotional, physical, or financial health. Or as somebody texted me last Sunday when I asked this question, they said, Skip, you can shorten this question and say, what kind of bishop are you going to be, Dr. Haynes?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I do believe that the bishop ought to be the pastor's pastor. Many bishops down the line may not agree with this philosophy, but here it is that it's not the bishop's responsibility only to handle the vision and the administrative arm of the church, but the bishop should be, and I will be that kind of bishop that would check in on the emotional, spiritual, and financial health of a pastor. I've been in all of those categories where I've experienced as a pastor burnout. I went through burnout for a whole year, that I could not function in the best of lights. And I made some difficult and bad decisions because I did not have the emotional support that I needed to move myself outside of the role and realm of pastor to be the best person that I could be. It's time out for us. I know this might rub some people wrong, but it's time out for us having sugar cups of Kool-Aid and cake after service. We have to train our leaders to live better and to be better. I practice what I preach. I work out 3 to 5 times a week, not because I have a vain agenda, but I want to live for a long time. I want to put myself in the best health. And then financially, you have to help pastors, watch this, not only be a blessing to the kingdom, but be a blessing to themselves, to invest into stocks and bonds and other equities, set monies aside, whether it be $20 or $30 a week, to put yourself in a better position so that you're not so dependent on a salary where you have to depend on whether or not you will live or whether you will move into ministry. In your finances become the fuel to give you the favor of God, to walk in the authority of God and live that. So you have to check on pastors. You have to see how they're doing, what they're doing, how their families are. Many pastors can't really pastor well because their marriages are broken, because they're trying to preach on one hand, but yet they're trying to manage the bomb or the ticking bomb that's going off in their houses. So I'm going to be the kind of bishop that's a pastor's pastor and check in on them that they might live their best life.
Thank you. Now, of course, this would probably be a question for a bishop, but you have worked with Episcopal leaders. What is probably the greatest misconception about a bishop or the Episcopal? What do you hear? What are the lay saying? What are pastors saying about, bishops? What's that misconception in your opinion?
I think the misconception of the office of bishop is simply this. Many people believe that the office of bishop is the panacea to all problems, which in reality is not. In many respects, the office of bishop is perceived power, meaning that we cannot, or a bishop cannot tell a person what they can or cannot do in a local church. They cannot. They can guide, they can direct, they can motivate, they can inspire, they can cast vision. But when it comes to the rubber meeting the road, when it comes to executing the vision, it's up to that local church and up to that pastor. And there has to be some level of ownership and accountability. If the church is dying, if the church is declining, then you have to have a heart check. What is it that you can do to make your corner brighter? What is it that you can do to increase your membership? What is it that you can do to make sure that your church is securing the next 20 to 30 years of life so that your church can live on? Here it is. The panacea of all problems is not the office of bishop, but it's understanding that together we can do great things through Christ that strengthens us.
Thank you. Bishop Lakey once said that the most important job of a bishop, that of a bishop, is making appointments to local churches. And so with that being said, how do you hope to address, and this question comes from a pastor, the lack of qualified preachers being admitted on trial to pastor our church, and in light of new persons coming into the itinerancy that don't see the itinerancy in the same way that preachers in past generations saw it? I'm kind of paraphrasing the question.
I got it. I think those are valiant questions. First and foremost, as I've worked with bishops and listened to bishops over the years, one of the things that I've gleaned, the first and foremost, is not to become so quick to make a decision on pairing a pastor with a congregation. I think it's critical that we take the time to learn that person's personality, learn their personality traits, and learn their gifts and skills and abilities, and also to learn the people. In other words, you have to take some time to spend with the people of God to see whether or not that person will fit with that category. Sometime in many respects, Lord willing, we elected on the other side. We're going to go right into some annual conferences. I will be, as a bishop, I'll be very careful not to make quick appointments without getting consultation, without getting as much information as possible to make sure that we make the best match possible. I know that because of human error in the midst of godly judgment, you will make some errors and there will be some appointments that will not go well. But you can live with the rest of assurance that if you've given it all you had, you've taken the time, the consideration and the assessment to make that decision, it will be made with the best earnest decision. Let me answer the next part of that question, is that we do have a lack of qualified preachers. Why? Because I believe that we have not set the atmosphere for the church, watch this now, to put ourselves in position for people to discern their call. It's been said often between the ages of 12 to 17, that's when young people begin to hear the voice of God and hear the discernment of God. I started preaching at the age of 17. I got saved at 16. It was in the conference, if you will, the assessment, the environment of the conference, that we saw images of individuals that we wanted to be like. We saw images of individuals who helped us discern what God was saying to us. We have to rechange our method of doing things and give an opportunity and an invitation for people to understand how to discern the call. The other part of it is that just like many denominations in this post-modernal world that we live in, we have to be open to attracting and recruiting individuals who are of the Methodist way that might fit in our cultural milieu and put us in position to add more pastors. Many other denominations or faith unions are not short on preachers because they create the environment for them. And I'm saying today that we have to do both. We have to attract, we have to create an environment, we have to give space for people to discern the call of God. And once we do that, I think this will begin to reverse what we see as a curse of limited resources.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a question from Dr. Ndu. I'm going to put it up. What might a bishop do if the whole region is declining?
That's great. And thank you, classmate Garrett, Evangelical Theological Seminary, Pastor Julio Andujo, for that question. I think it's critical that we have to look at what church growth looks like. What church growth looked like in the 90s and the 2000s will not look like in 2020 and beyond. In particular, we've had a generation from the 90s to the 2000s of mega churches. All of the stats, all of the data points to the fact that the church itself will not only become, it won't become larger, but it'll become smaller. We have to get people to the mindset, watch this now, that just because it's big, it doesn't mean it's right. We can have healthy churches from 50 to 100 to 150 members if we train and develop all of the pastors with the tools that are necessary for church growth. I understand because I've been on the other side. I've pastored small churches. I just not have this Beebe Memorial experience. I had New Hope CME Church. When I got there, it was 40 members. We grew to 110. When I was at Curry Temple in Compton, California, we had 37 members that were declining. And we grew from 37 to over 350 in 1 year. It's because there is a science to church growth. And as a leader and as a bishop, I will share all of those tools and gifts to the entire region. So for example, instead of just having 3 meetings a year, one of the meetings that we will have, whether it be a fourth meeting or one of the third meetings, has to be a pastoral leadership and development meeting where you learn the skill sets, the tools, and the abilities to grow churches. And I believe that if we do that, we can change not only a whole region, but a whole church.
Thank you. I have one additional question to ask you, and then we'll give you an opportunity. Let me ask this question because this is important about our work in Africa. This is to all aspirants. How do you hope to help grow and expand the work in Africa?
So thank you, Pastor Emmanuel Quedam. I know you very well. I've been blessed since my time in particular at Beebe Memorial Cathedral, that every single year, dating back to Bishop Cunningham when I was pastor since 2003, we've had some kind of mission work. In fact, when Bishop Kenneth Carter was first elected, he came to our church, and one of our members who spearheaded, which was Connie Davison, who did that for 3 bishops prior to that, along with Dr. I. Carlton Falk, who helped our work in the mission of Beebe Memorial Cathedral. We not only set resources, but we found ways to connect and partner with local congregations in the mother continent to not only do the work, but do the ministry of the work in Africa. Watch this. It's important for us to raise the question or deal with the reality of whether our focus as a church will be missional, meaning a global mission, or whether we will attempt to expand the congregational reach of our church. It is important. I've been to Africa in 2019. I visited the 11th Episcopal District. We went to Nairobi, Kenya. I stayed there throughout the entire conference that Bishop Kenneth Carter had, along when Bishop C. James King was there. I was en route. We had to turn around because a war had broke out. So from down through the years, I've always supported our work. But more importantly, I've supported it from a missional standpoint to make an impact on the lives of those individuals who live there, who carry the name of Jesus in their mouths.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And this will be the last question, and then we'll give you a chance to make your closing statement. Does the science of church growth translate to rural settings?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Jeremiah Hill, for that question. It translates to wherever you are in whatever context. The outcome or the measurements might be different, but it translates to wherever you are. And many people have a misconception about cities like Oakland. Oakland is made up a population of former Louisianans and Texans. So many respects, the people that migrate from the South that live in the West or in the North are an extension of the family of those who are rural settings. In other words, those cultures come along with them. And you have to translate the science to the culture to make the measurable results. Let me give you an example. If you're living in a population where it's 500 individuals, and this is one of my experiences, and one of the farms at harvest time, most of the resources that come from some areas only come once a year. How do you help that church sustain its ministry over 12 months? First of all, you give them a budget and you take the resources that they have. I'm just using it as an example, and spread it out and allocate it over the months. But also you have a way to partner with the next neighborhood organization or nonprofit to carry out the mission. You're able to do that by the science of growth. Science of growth sometimes translates into partnerships. You see this listed in our strategic plan. But more importantly, and I've not had an opportunity to say this, everything that begins with the science must begin with fasting and praying. I'm a person of prayer. I pray literally every day. We've been having a prayer line for the last 20-some years that's translated through churches, because nothing, the Bible declares, some things only come by prayer and fasting. I fast at least once a week for 24 hours and multiple times every 3 months for 3 to 4 days, because I do it because I want to have the spiritual power, the surrender to God, to do what God has called us to do the work that he has given us.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. So what I'd like for you to do now is to take just a couple of minutes to make your closing case, if you will, to the delegates that are watching, and not only delegates, but all of the stakeholders, the non-delegates as well, as to why when we go to Cincinnati that they should elect you as bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church.
First and foremost, to those who are tuning in, those delegates, stakeholders, to the Episcopal leaders who are tuned in, those who know me understand that I'm a 5th generation CME. I have roots that come from the 4th Episcopal District in the cities of Winona and the cities of Holly Springs, where my great-grandfather was a member of the Beverly Chapel CME Church. So Christian Methodism is not only in my blood, but it's in my bones. I've not only served this church, as I've stated before, at the highest level, but I continue to serve because I love God and I love the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. It's at this current church that God has blessed me to serve and expand our territory, that not only we have taken this church to the highest height, but God has privileged me to be one of the few CMEs to pray over the U.S. Congress at the White House. And I did that representing the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. Every communion that I go, I lift up the name of the CME Church, because I believe in God's tender plant that is now a mighty oak. I believe in not only what God has given us, but the system by which we have inherited, that I see other individuals copy it and begin to grow exponentially. I believe in God that if you elect me as the 64th bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, not only will I be a people lover, a God chaser, and one who is a fervent administrator, who has financial skills that not only grow, but develop churches to its highest heights. I believe that I will make the impact adding to the College of Bishops. I'm just one person, but I'm asking today that you just add one. Add one who has the skill set, the relationship ability, the ability to grow churches, not just one, but all of the churches that I've been connected to by God's grace. And it's because of that, I'm asking for your vote to vote me in as the 64th Bishop of the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And I believe, God, that when I'm hitting the ground running, I will serve, and I will serve until God has given me rest to do what God has called me to do. And that's to make thriving churches, develop healthy and happy local pastors, and to empower laity to live by faith and not by sight. This is my plea. I've said all these 4 years, whether it be virtually or whether it been in person, that I plan to strengthen tradition while activating a new direction. I need you to stand with Dr. Charley Haynes Jr. And whether it be a ballot, whether it be a clicker in your hand, I need you to vote for me. I am of age. I've been serving this long. I have 3 young adult children. I'm happily married, and I'm ready to lead our church to the next level. But I need your support. I need your prayers. And more importantly, I need your votes. Thank you, Dr. Skip Mason, for this amazing time that I have shared with you. And I look forward to listening to my other colleagues, Helton and Heath, as they share their testimonies and answer some of these difficult questions. Blessings.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Haynes. We appreciate you as well. And we will post your website in case somebody wants to explore. I know it's been out, but we'll post that. Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody, we appreciate Dr. Heath. I know I'm a little blurry today. I'm not sure what's going on. I'm in my pastor study. Normally, I'm in my library at home. My good friend and buddy, Dr. McDuffie, said, Frat, you're looking blurry today. I get it, preacher. I know I'm a little blurry, but y'all not here to see me. You're here to see the candidates. But I do want to take a moment before we bring Dr. Heath up, because I'm so grateful. We have been averaging over 1,000 viewers for these candidate forums. And I just want to just share some of the people who are watching, because I don't take it for granted that you are watching and sharing because you love your church, and because that you are interested in what's going on. Good to see Justice Lawson all the way from Ghana. Delighted to have our First Lady and Senior Bishop sharing with us as well. And I just wanted to share a few. I don't want to put these up while the candidates are speaking, but just wanted to just share some of the great people who are watching. And this has been shown on Facebook, on about 5 different pages, and YouTube. Please take some time to share with others, and to invite them to come and to check out the wonderful candidates that we have today. And I'll share a few more now. So let me share this video, and then I'll bring our next candidate up, Dr. Clarence Kelby Heath.
You ask me why Heath. As for me, it's a vote for where I see the CME Church going. Reverend Heath has almost 28 years of proven leadership and has served our church in the 8th Episcopal District very well. My name is Tony Williams, and I was brought up in the CME Church right here at Carter Metropolitan in Fort Worth, Texas. We know the type of leader we're getting with a vote for Heath. We know the type of ideas he would share with the clergy and the lay. Heath can move the CME Church forward into the post-digital era where our members can continue to grow in their journey with the Lord, and being digital will be noticed by its absence and not by its presence. Last year, Pastor Heath expanded some of his ministries and created some new ones and asked me to be part of that transition. He said we need to bring our worship experience online, but we can't leave any group behind. So we started training our members and increased the level of communication, and we generated that church family closeness by having congregational calls every Friday. Church school and Bible study classes went online while adhering to the same church schedule every week. Look, our church has a passion to serve others, and our drive-through ministry and food giveaway was an innovative way to let the community know we're there with them while allowing our church members to pick up communion items and drop off their tithes and offerings. And with that, I am hopeful to have that added leadership to move the CME Church forward. The General Conference vote for bishop is important, but we are now where we need to decide on new leaders who can work well within the College of Bishops, but with that injection of energy from someone who can create new opportunities to share the gospel. So it's important to share our support for our CME family who will decide on a direction for our denomination. Vote CK Heath for Bishop in 22.
Thank you. And again, welcome, Dr. Heath. Glad to have you here with me today. We're going to jump right into the conversation and question why you and why now, and what do you hope to bring to the College of Bishops?
All right. First of all, again, I want to just thank you, Dr. Mason, and I really appreciate the kind of time that you're giving us. There've been a great number of forums and avenues for us to share in 1 minute or 2 minutes where we really haven't been able to just share some of our thoughts in a little bit more detail. I have a simple answer and a little bit more information. The first thing is, I think it's time. When you look at the type of background, places I've been and things that I've been able to do, thank God, and through the graces and the opportunities across the church, I believe it's a time for me now to step up and to serve the church at another level. I think these items are very important. When I think about the first church I served, the Jones Tabernacle CME in Macon, Bethel CME in Sarasota, Florida, Thurgood CME in Birmingham, Central Metropolitan in Jacksonville, Greenwood in Memphis, Tennessee, and right now where I'm currently serving, Carter Metropolitan CME Church. My hat is off to all the leaders and members and the various presiding elders that were over those districts and the bishops that gave me an opportunity to serve. The reason why I'm bringing that up, those experiences and sharing and growing with other members and their families have given me a wealth of information and knowledge and wisdom from a spiritual standpoint and a relationship standpoint and a financial standpoint, to include how my family, my wife, and our sons have been able to experience what it means to be an itinerant ministry. I started as a young adult single. I understand what it means when you marry. As a young adult, I understand what it means when you begin having children and watching them grow and their interaction within the church, as well as my interaction with other families, as they too have experienced what it means for pastors to transition and to change, and to feel those deep feelings of what it means when we go through grief in our transitions. And sometimes it works out well in some instances, and sometimes it don't. But one of the things I'm grateful for, it has worked out very well. But let me say this, which is also important. My educational training is very extensive. And here again, I thank God for a lot of mentors and professors and also preachers and ministers and even lay people in the church who helped to encourage and push me along the way, and even some supporting not only with their prayers, even financially. I have a business background, which gives me various areas that I can look at and begin to identify and see such things as it relates to our local church setting, and for that matter, even on a connectional level. I have a gift for looking at organizations, structures, and systems, and also the people that are in those systems and the gifts and how they fit and how they can work together. And then when things are not working like they should work, or we feel that they can do better, I have a skill set to know how to teach and train, to encourage, to empower. Some of the other things, I have a military background. I was 11B and 11M in infantry, started at 17 years old. And after 4 years in the Army National Guard, I was commissioned. 1995, I became a chaplain in the National Guard. And in 96, of course, I finished my degrees at ITC at Phillips School of Theology. So I just want to say the time is now. And that for those that are asking, I was born in 1968. I'll be 16 years before 70 years old. And time is ticking, and we're ready to get out there and do what's necessary.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate your opening remarks and your response to my first question. I want to get right into some of the questions. We're going to ask a few of the similar and then some additional questions. This question has come up. What are your thoughts on an effective plan for church planning? Not starting churches with support, but church planning. What are your thoughts on it, Dr. Heath?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. And I know over the years, we have talked a lot on a connectional level about how we should approach church planning. And even some of our local congregations have been encouraged to start church planning. There are lots of ways to plant churches. And if I can say, to give 3 examples, and I've been at Carter Metropolitan for the last 8 years, and I'm definitely grateful for the leaders and members there. We've had 3 different congregations that have been a part of our church for one reason or another, whether it be a congregation which has not had a place to go. They've been able to be present at Carter to worship and figure things out as they regroup. We've had a couple of churches, and one I want to highlight specifically that was not CME. And I know the question that pertains to us is CME, but I just want to give this as an example, which was a church plant that started in Carter and used a chapel for worship in the evening and Bible studies during the week. I want to say that's a clear example of how we can have one way of doing church planning where the funds are not even available. That those churches where they have facilities that are being underused is a way to open their doors for a congregation or a minister that's trying to get started. And if the congregation would be willing, they can offer facilities either at a love offering or as long as they can withstand having that congregation be present. So that's one way to get right into it without a whole lot of planning. And some other ways that may require canvassing the communities, trying to look at how to bring about some data and the interest of individuals that may be in that community to start a church. Other examples are using local school settings where if the board or that principal is receptive to having individuals that like to start, those are some ways. A number of other items, ministers who have the credentials can either be sent out to start a Bible study. So church planning just doesn't start with the church. You have to see once those individuals become a part of that study or that prayer group, if that's what they would like to form. So that's kind of a short answer, but those are several ways that we can do effective church planning when we think about not having all the funds in place.
Thank you very much. Let me share this question. As one who aspires to the office of bishop in the CME Church, what is your plan for empowering local congregations for effective ministry? And consider the following, and I'm going to just list one of the points. A strategy for matching congregations and pastor. Talk about what you envision as a bishop in terms of effective ministry and putting the right pastor with the right congregation.
All right. Well, look, I hope this can be seen. This is a package of M&Ms. I want to bring a few, if I can say, ways to illustrate. The reason why I lift this package of M&Ms up, many years ago when I started pastoring, I've been pastoring for over, 28 years now. There's a number of M's that can help any pastor that I would like to teach and train from as an Episcopal leader. And it has to do with 5 M's: mission, ministers, members, ministry, and then money. I want to just repeat that one more time. Mission, being mission focused. An Episcopal leader that's focused on training and grooming ministers. Members, helping members to be equipped at the local level. And then developing ministries that fit for our present era. We know that we're dealing with a pandemic. And then lastly, how ministers are equipped to handle money. One of the things that I see as we travel across the church and visit and see different issues come about is that in some ways, we're not as equipped as we could be to really handle some of the situations that we're dealing with. And what happens in many cases, when ministers are not as equipped or the leadership within that particular church, it creates a frustration. Where there's a frustration, then the minister may try anything, or sometimes may not, or leaders to try to compensate for where we may not have the tools in place in order to move forward. So when I think about tools, here's some basic tools that ministers must have when we talk about administration. How do you put a budget in place, and how do you develop a calendar? These are two basic items that if a minister does not go in the door with, whether it's first time pastoring or whether individuals been pastoring for a while, and even if you have been pastoring for a while, if you're not using those tools effectively, you're missing out on a lot of ways to be efficient and effective when it comes to maximizing that congregation's potential and even that minister's gift. So that's some of the items I'd like to share. That was a long question, and I want to be able to sufficiently answer each portion of it. I don't know if we need to go back and look at pieces of it.
No, that was good. I think you covered it. I love M&Ms, by the way. You're trying to tempt me because I'm trying to get back on sweets. But let's continue. I think this is a question I'm asking all of the aspirants, because I think it's just a good question. Is the bishop in the CME church the pastor's pastor? Why not? First part of the question. And if the bishop is the pastor's pastor, excuse me, and you are elected, please explain your plan for guiding your pastors to spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial health.
Let's start the first one. It's a structural question and a cultural question. What do I mean by that? Structurally in the CME church, we don't have quote unquote bishops that are assigned as pastors to those of us who are pastoring. In fact, even though many of us are pastoring, we may have individuals that have pastored us in the church at some point, or maybe the sons and daughters of those who are pastors that are still living. So from a structured sense, bishops really are not assigned as far as being a pastor over pastors. But from the CME cultural standpoint, I would say yes. We do need those pastoral leaders in place. In this sense, I always thought if the bishop had the kind of authority to assign me to a church, then there ought to be some relationship that I am able to establish with the bishop as a pastor. But I think it's also important, even though the question did not ask this, we can't forget either that we have presiding elders who are kind of in that intermediary or supervisory role, that while we can look at bishops as our pastors, we also have presiding elders that serve somewhat in that capacity as well. So we have at least two leaders that we can look to, and sometimes relationships kind of define how that would take place. And I wish I had a little bit more time to go into some of the books of various CME authors. One I read, Henry C. Riley, I believe, presiding elder from the 9th Episcopal District in 1984, who gives a presiding elder's perspective, in which he would say that bishops are pastors, bishops are pastors to the pastors, but he also emphasizes the role of presiding elders as well. To the second part of that question, dealing with the emotional and the physical and the financial and the spiritual, we're right now in the process of planning our leadership training institute in a few weeks. And a number of these items that are listed in terms of spirituality, emotional, physical, and financial health will be various topics that we'll be focusing on. The reason why I'm sharing that, there are many ministries and things that I've been a part of that I believe will translate and transition to the next level, which is also saying I'm not trying to get ready for a particular place. My mindset and spirit is already cultivated to step into a setting and to be able to focus on those particular items. We know that mental health right now is a serious issue. And then not just in the CME church, but as a Black community, these are issues that extend outside the CME church, where when we talk about financial health, emotional, spiritual, that we just have to keep working on those items in the church, encouraging them in our families as well as the communities. We will have workshops specifically dealing with mental health as it relates to clergy, lay, all ages, including young adults, and even a special emphasis on those that are youth. And this will translate again, serving in the Episcopal level. And I want to say this very quickly about our youth and young adults. Right now, the youth are taking their lives at enormous rates when we think about suicide. And we ain't got time to sit around the table and make too many plans. Yes, I understand we have to plan, but we need to make some decisions to be impactful right now. So that'll be one of the gifts I bring to the table too. I know how to sit, know how to plan, but I also know how to mobilize, and let's get moving now, because people are in need, people are dying, and people are hurting. And we can't keep fooling around, taking all the time that we take sometime to get some of the things done that need to be done.
Thank you very much. So another question that came through my text. So we know that the women in the church outnumber the men and a very powerful and dominant force in the church. What do you envision to attract more young adults to return back? Let me put the question up. What is the plan for churches who have lost young adults and to increase male membership in the church?
That's a very good question. I want to start by saying that today, Minister Tierra Gandhi, who is one of the local preachers in our church, preached a powerful message, passing the baton, or passing on in terms of legacy and things of that nature. And she did an awesome job. I'm highlighting her, and I didn't know this question would be raised, so I'm raising that too, because I'm not trying to politicize. I'm very serious about this. We need to put our young adults in place right now. We got to quit talking about what they may or may not do. All of us make mistakes. All of us have times that we have to grow. Even our senior members, we all in a period of growing, and we're growing together. I think we need to just go ahead and put young adults in place. Those that are leaders need to be challenged to have young adults around them, even youth, and not keep waiting for whatever it is that they're looking for, this perfect moment for the exact right person to put in place. We have young adults that are working in banks, teaching school, handling classes. I mean, the list goes on. And there are ways to have young adults working right beside those of us who are 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, if we just open the door a little bit and begin to share. In terms of men membership, one of the blessings that I've had over the years is that we've not had the issue of men not being able to participate in church and to be right along there with our sisters. And there have been a number of church conferences where we have as many men, and I'm just highlighting that, as we've had as women in the church. When you come to Carter, and for that matter, if you had been at Greenwood, Central, Thurgood, Bethel, and even Jones Tabernacle, where we pastored as early as 1994. Men, women of all ages, children, youth, young adults. That's something that's been a part of my makeup even before we start talking about this in the last 15 to 20 years. God gave me a vision called Matrix, and we've been using it here again for years, almost 3 decades, where you have any age, regardless of the gender, that can be put in any particular situation, and everybody is sharing and working together. If you come to Carter, you're going to see adult superintendents, young superintendents. You're going to see young people working with music. You're going to see older people working with music. Older people working with technology, young people working with technology. Young people on the steward board, older people on the steward board. So we just have to pull the age requirement piece off and remember that where a person is available, and if they're willing, and they have the skills, put them in place. If they don't have the skills but still interested, put them in place and train them so that they can grow and begin to be a part of the church. So that's my response here.
Thank you very much. This question comes from Sister Sherlyn Johnson Granville, my good friend out of Warner Robins. If elected, will you host forums for lay women, issues of concern to women in our church non-clergy?
That's a very good question. When you say forums, that may be a little bit difficult for me, and let me share with you why. I'm a very practical person, and if you sit around too long, having a whole lot of meetings and forums, you won't get nothing done. And I'll give an example. We have many lay women, and then I want to include clergy that are actively involved in the church as we speak. But then secondly, and I want to use our clergy, the ladies in our church who are clergy. We have some that are retired, some that are local, on a local track, some that are on traveling track, some that have the same credentials that I do, and some that are at the beginning of their ministries. One of the things that I do in working with our preachers, and many of them are women, we talk about these issues openly. But then secondly, the ladies have a specific time that they can talk about the issues that they would like to on their own. There's some things that women want to talk about without the presence of a brother. So if I can respond this way, am I supportive of women, lay women, as well as clergy in the church? Most certainly I am. That's a part of my track record. I'm very concerned about it, but I'm also concerned about it not to sit around in meetings all the time and talk about it, but let's put people in place so we can move forward.
Thank you very much. Talk about, Dr. Heath, the work in Africa. Your thoughts on our brothers and sisters in Africa and how you will work and address some of the challenges that they have in order to effectively grow the ministry there.
One of the things that we were taught even before I went to Africa in the early 90s, while we were in seminary, is that the growth and future of the church would be in places like South America as well as Africa. And I had the blessing and privilege to go to the 10th Episcopal District as Bishop Godwin Moete was presiding, and our best wishes to him, his family, as well as folk in the 10th and the 11th that benefited from his leadership, as well as the various leadership roles and positions that he served, not only in CME Church, but as well as the seminaries, the government, and other communities that he was a part of. The churches in Africa, if I could just be plural, in both 10th and 11th district, don't have issues with growth. They will have the same issues that we have, but one more so than the other. And I start with the second one first. It has to do with resources. I want to call a person's name that I lift in high regard, and that's Mayor McKinney. And of course, we know Bishop Carter is doing much mission work and outreach work in building over in the 11th. Reverend McKinney is one of those ladies that I hold in high regard for her passion and work. And I've called her name because I've been able to learn from her. And in various congregations over the years, we've been able to support her as she's brought resources and done what she could, not only to empower the people, but as well as the women. So one of the things, how do we not just send resources, but help Africa generate and use the resources also that it also has. But the second thing is the idea of training and teaching, which is a shared issue and challenge for us all over. Of course, we have resources in United States as well as Africa have resources, but we have to figure out ways which there are some models in place to really bring forth training for the preachers, clergy persons, ministers, persons that are in lay, and especially our young people. We cannot leave them out. So that's teaching, training, resources, and things of that nature. Oh, and I need to share this. I had the blessing to go to Ghana and Liberia this past fall and spend time in worship, as well as supporting and being with our members in those areas.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Heath, what kind of bishop do you think you would be? I know that's a broad stroke question, and it sort of comes off of the statement Bishop Lakey made about making appointments. You've already talked about the spiritual and emotional help for pastors, but what kind of bishop do you think you would be?
I'm concerned about the people. That's going to be my deepest thing about my character and my trait. I'm very concerned about any and everyone that I'm working with 100+%. I'm not a person that's partial, which means, number one, I'm not going to be bought out, but at the same time, I'm not looking for other people to sell out. I'm looking for individuals and be glad to work with any person that's, trying to be genuine and working to be their best selves, because that's what I'm doing too. I'm working to be my best self. And I feel like too, that we'll be in the same boat. I know we all have positions and titles, but that's not the thing that concerns me most. I'm a real people person. I like to get involved with what's going on, head first, heart first, hand first, feet first, and be a part of what's going on. So I'm really engaged with our youth, our young adults, our adults, male, female, and whatever, whether you're elderly or not. If you're 2 years old, you're walking in. and I got time to spend time with you, that's me. I believe you're on mute. You're still on mute.
All right. Thank you, my brother. Let me share this question with you. Someone asked a question about our retired pastors. And I want to share this one. Retired pastors in many districts are overlooked. How can this experience and wisdom be used, or will you as a bishop see retirees as integral in the healing of our denomination?
Let me start with that latter part first. Do I see retirees as integral in the healing of our denomination? I think we have to be very careful to place on any one person or any one particular group, I don't say unrealistic, but an expectation that may not even be their expectation. I think we ought to respect that persons that have retired fit within a broad spectrum. You have some individuals that when they retire, they real quick to tell you, I'm talking about our clergy, they have retired. But then we have another group of individuals that have retired, but yet still want to remain active. So I think you have to look at things on a case-by-case basis, based on that individual's willingness and their interest to give. I do believe that our retired ministers, both men and women, have a wealth of information, wisdom, and experiences that can be shared with those that are younger preachers in the church, and for that matter, ministers that might want to reach out. I do want to challenge us that everything can't happen structurally. I do believe it should take place structurally, but we got to get back to relationships. Just if you see a elderly individual, or if an elderly individual sees somebody young, we got to break this thing about it got to be a meeting all the time or emotion. What's wrong with a retired minister letting younger preachers know that they are available? And I'm sharing that based on how a part of my upbringing was. There were a number of older ministers that made themselves available. I remember the first funeral I would do, and I had about 3 or 4 elderly retired ministers present, asking them to watch me so they could tell me how to conduct a funeral. They let me conduct it, and after it was over with, they said, "This is where you stand. This is where you do that." So I'm all for persons that are retired to be intricately involved. We have a retired minister at our church. She's very active and preaching, praying, working with ministries, and also she's serving as a mentor to some of our younger ministers. And then she's one of the key women in our ministry that also help support the other ladies that are within the church, and they have my full support. And I understand they have their time where they talk and commune together. So I hope that helps. I don't believe in overlooking people. I put it that way.
Right. Thank you. I think I have 2 more questions, and then you'll get a chance to make your closing statement. Someone has asked, what is your vision for growing the church, and emphasis specifically on winning souls to Christ?
Wow, growing the church. That's a unique question, because you got a couple of words in that is extremely important: vision as well as growth. Growing does not mean the same thing to everyone, and also it's based on the areas that you are in. I had the blessing to grow up in a rural area. I come out of a church, Brinson Chapel CME Church, which was a very small congregation in Greenville, Georgia. And of course, there was a time that my family went to Whitberry, and I'm grateful for my experiences of life in Whitberry, Georgia. We were in the Baptist church, and then when I graduated from high school, I went here, yonder, and there, just experiencing different things, and eventually came back to the CME Church. So my family is both generationally, we have Baptists, and also generationally, we have CMEs, and some of those persons in CME Church are still pastoring as we speak. So growth is something that really has to be a desire of that minister as well as that congregation. And we have to pray for growth. We have to work toward growth, and we have to teach about growth. It has become a part of the mindset of the church. But then the other part about growing is you got to have stability. And so there are two words I want to leave with that. We have to have preservation and growth at the same time, or progress, if I can use that word. Preserve and progress. Progress and preserve. And by having, if we speak death in our churches, if members are always fighting, if ministers and congregations can't get along, and you have guests that are coming in, people watching and observing, they're not healthy relationships, then the conditions for growth are not even there. So the church, just want to repeat it one more time. The leaders, the members, and the ministers have to be on a page to speak growth, to pray growth, to think about growth, and to work toward it to make it happen. And growth can take place any place where there's an interest, and then that keyword vision. A vision for growth is taking place. And I want to end by saying this. If you don't have a vision for growth, a vision for stability, the word itself is very true. Where there is no vision, people perish. And that's a reality. And you can have all the money in the bank, and there are countless of churches and in various denominations that have money. But when they don't have clear vision, that door is still shut down. So that's what I would say. You got to have a vision for growth. You got to talk growth, speak growth, pray growth. First, you need to stabilize. Congregation need to be on the same page. Ministers need to be on the same page. I mean, it takes some work, but it can happen. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Heath, for responding to all of the questions. I'm going to ask you now to take a couple of minutes, if you would, and speak directly to the delegates and to all of the stakeholders who are watching, who are depending on delegates to go to Cincinnati prayerfully and spiritually, and making the right choices that are going to advance our church forward. Make your case and your closing statement as to why they should elect you as a bishop and to the College of Bishop at this time.
Again, I just want to say thank you. I can't, I can't think enough about how grateful I am that we can have this platform that you're allowing me to share, not only with our candidates who are present, but candidates have already taken place and those that will come, to be able to share a little bit more in detail. I believe that it's time to vote C.K. Heath for bishop for many reasons. The last thing I'll share with you is this. We've not only been running for bishop and campaigning and traveling, but we've also put in the extra time to prepare ourselves for right now. When I graduated and got my seminary degrees in 96, that was over 25 years ago. And when I received my doctorate and started working on it, that's been some time ago. And what I realized, even as a pastor at the local church, as equipped as I think I might be and have been prepared, that there's still a lot of things that I was unaware of. The language in church has changed. So I was blessed to go to leadership training in Fort Worth in 2020 and graduate. And right now I've been in a program doing specific research on the Methodist Church, connectionalism, and even how to strengthen the itinerant work that we do in the church. I just spent 50 hours last week in prayer, study with other ministers across the United States, and just focusing and honing in on how do we develop and move the CME Church forward. I am that leader. I'm asking you to remember, vote C.K. Heath for bishop. And I did bring another piece of candy. I hope this can be seen okay. A candy bar says Heath. I want you to remember that. The V is for visionary leader. O, opportunities for all ages and whatever your gender may be. T is about teamwork. I believe in teamwork because it helps us to move forward. And then when you look at my track record of ministry, you see someone that's worked with many congregations that I'm grateful for, where you'll see efficient and effective leadership. Again, thank you, Dr. Skip Mason. I'm asking all delegates to vote C.K. Heath when it's time for us to come together in general conference. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Dr. Heath. Thank you very much for the time that you have spent with us. And we pray God's blessings to you and your family as you continue this journey And God willing, we'll see you in Cincinnati in how many days? 34 days and counting. God bless you, my brother.
Yes, sir. Y'all take care. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We're delighted to have spent some time with Dr. Heath. And before I bring up Dr. Helton, just want to share a couple of more people who have joined us as we transition to our third and final aspirant for this particular session. But it's just always good to see, particularly when our brothers and sisters from across our Zion take some time to tune in. And I love it because these candidate forums have a whole nother life after the live show because it is in constant rotation. And I'm glad that we can spend some time with them uninterrupted and have them share their thoughts about our church. We do have a very tough decision to make. All of these are fantastic aspirants and candidates, and we have to be in prayer, amen, for that. So what I want to do before I bring up Dr. Helton is to share this video with you.
And skill and a pastor's heart at the highest level. Such leadership skills. Greetings to my CME Church family and friends. I am Reverend Dr. Ricky D. Helton, the senior pastor of Israel Metropolitan CME Church in Washington, D.C., a leader with a servant's touch and a pastor's heart. I pray that all of you are doing well and staying safe. The 2022 General Conference is approaching quickly. As a pastor in the CME Church for the past 37 years, 14 of which have been at my current church, I have served with a servant's touch and a pastor's heart in our beloved denomination. Our denomination needs experience, vision, and skill, and a pastor's heart at the highest level. Such leadership skills and characteristics I possess and have demonstrated on a local, regional, and connectional level. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 23, verse 11, that the greatest among you shall be your servant. I therefore seek your prayers and your support as I press forward to be the best servant leader that I can possibly be. I strive to forever be and to always have a servant's touch with the pastor's heart. God bless you.
We are delighted to have Dr. Ricky Helton with us today. He's been patiently waiting in the green room as his fellow brethren and candidates have shared. Dr. Helton, good to see you, my friend. And we're going to jump right in. Thank you. Jump right in. Tell the folks watching why you, why now, and what do you bring to the bench, otherwise known as the College of Bishops.
Thank you, Dr. Mason, for this unique opportunity and also to let some of the nervousness dissipate, amen, as I've watched my colleagues go before me. One of the main reasons why I'm seeking this position is that I have nothing further to prove, amen, in this church. I am resolute in my convictions. I have served this church since 1980 as a clergy person. When I was 14 years old, I heard the call of God. It took me 3 years to discern that call. By the time I reached my 12th year in high school, I responded to that call. At the beginning of my senior year in high school, I can recall the day, it was September the 3rd, 1978, when I responded to that voice that had been knocking at my heart's door for so many years. I am ready for this position because I have pastored in small towns. I've pastored in mid-sized towns. I've pastored in the rural, and now I pastor in a major metropolis area in Washington, D.C. I am ready to serve this church. I have served on major positions in our denomination at the highest level, even currently serving as the Committee on Episcopacy chairperson, where we have had to meet 2 times, unfortunately, through the untimely deaths of 2 of our prelates. We thank God that we were in place and we were ready to serve. I am ready for this position because I want to help our youth, our young adults, and our children continue to be prepared to take this church. Not only be prepared, but to do it even now as we speak. If you were to come and visit my church right now, you would see young adults busy at work, preparing budgets, doing major church business as it relates to our fiscal accountability. I'm ready because we have recently just completed, amen, a major renovation in our church. We have recently garnered grants. We have recently contracted with outside organizations to help finance our church well into the future. We need to have leadership that is visionary, leadership that is mission-minded, and leadership that is ready to move our church forward. And I just believe, Dr. Mason, that I'm ready for that at this particular time in my life. I want to take our church forward and do the best possible job and to be the best person with integrity and with moral conscience that I can possibly be. Thank you for allowing that question to be asked. And I hope and pray that I can serve at this level with the best of my ability.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Helton, for your response and for your opening statement. Let's jump right into some of the questions that some of our members have posed. And this one comes up often, thoughts on consolidation when it comes to several struggling congregations that we have across our Zion. What's your thoughts on it? And if elected bishop, are you in favor of merging and consolidating some of our congregations?
Yes, I'm in favor of that. It needs to have a lot of time put to it because it's like marrying 2 families together. And it takes time and a lot of skill sets to bring those kinds of entities together. I had the privilege this morning of ministering at one of the churches here in the 6th District. And to my surprise, at Warner Robins CME Church, I heard the history of Warner Robins CME Church and in Warner Robins, Georgia. And we had just been there at the Episcopal celebration. And I wanted to stay over and be with a local congregation. And they told me the history of that church. It was a combination of 2 churches that came together 46 years ago. And now they have one of the biggest facilities that you can ever see, one of the most serious ministries I've ever seen. I've seen other instances where it has worked in the 3rd Episcopal District. I've seen it work in the 7th Episcopal District. I've seen it work all over our connection. We must not be intimidated by it. We must not be intimidated by it. It takes very conscientious effort of a bishop to understand it's going to take the right pastor to pull this off. You cannot send a pastor in those particular churches that have a lot of needs within him or herself. That pastor needs to be well defined and can handle all of the many ambiguities that would inevitably rise when you start to bring all those leaders together who were used to being in power and were used to having control and may not have that same level of control. And I think that those persons would need to be merged together very, very carefully.
Thank you. And this question sort of leads to the next question that I have, that was posed as one who aspires to the office of bishop in the CME Church. So what is your plan for empowering local congregations for effective ministry? And the second part of that, supporting clergy and lay in your Episcopal district by removing the traditional denominational barriers to successful ministry.
I think one of the things that we need to do, and you can see it with my banner over my head, we have to reimagine the church. Reimagination sometimes is a threat to tradition. Many times persons don't want to reimagine our future, but we must be able to reimagine our church if we're going to move forward. We must be able to look at how our church can prosper and be effective well into the next century, into the next year, into the next decade. And we cannot do that without having some vision, without having a good understanding of our culture. We can reimagine how we move forward, but it's going to take a great deal of faith. It's going to take a great deal of effort. And I believe, Dr. Mason, that we have the wherewithal to do that as a denomination. It's going to take excellent leadership on behalf of bishops. It's going to take excellent leadership on behalf of presiding elders and pastors and those local leaders inside the church if we're going to be able to do this.
Thank you, Dr. Helton. And I asked this question earlier, I think, to Dr. Haynes. And I ask you because the Helton name is a name known throughout our episcopacy, of course, with your uncle having served as bishop. What do you see perhaps as some misconceptions about a bishop or the role of a bishop that may have hurt or hindered our church?
Well, I heard someone this morning say something after church, and I did minister this morning and preach. And one of the oldest gentlemen in the church came in the parking lot after church. He said something that I'm still trying to get through, and he's very seasoned, retired clergy. And this is what he said regarding myself, and it's regarding a misconception that perhaps is lingering in our church. He said, I don't believe that Dr. Helton will be a bishop that would be out to become rich. And he's so right. And that is a misconception. I don't know where that question or where that came from, but I can certainly say that that is a misconception that some people have. But I want to dispute that, namely because I am very, very financially conscious. I check my credit score all the time because I don't believe that I can preach to others if I'm not fiscally sound myself. So I think that's one of the misconceptions that's out there, and that sometimes bishops don't have the keenest financial astuteness. That's another one out there. Now, that's probably not true, but that is a conception that is out there that many people have. And I think that we need to begin to demystify that myth that is out there by doing the very best job that we can as upcoming leaders and bishops in our church. And I think that if we can do that, we can debunk many of the myths that are out there, that are lingering out there, that many people have, that bishops are in it for the wrong reasons. And certainly, I don't see that within myself. And I would pray that that myth could be dissipated in our church. But that is, Dr. Mason, a common misconception that that people have among for the episcopacy.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that very much so, because there are misconceptions, and we realize that there are. Talk about now, if you will, this group of young adults and men, particularly those two, because as I mentioned earlier, we know our women are very strong. Our men are strong, but not in large numbers as our sisters. And so talk about, as an Episcopal leader, your foresight about making sure that our youth and young adults are engaged and involved. And we know that many leave after college and they don't return. Have you given some thought to what you would do and how you would manage that, dealing with young adults and getting more men active and involved in the church?
Let me first start out with the latter. I have 3 very, very, very successful young adult children that we reared through the CME Church. We took them to all of the major meetings for youth, young adults, and children. From the time that they could barely walk, we had them there. And I think that the key to involvement, the key to the success of our young adult children and youth is to keep them motivated, to keep them involved in the local church. As I mentioned earlier, we've done a great job of doing that. All of the major positions in my church have been filled by young adults. My wife and I, Dr. Mason, met at the National Youth and Young Adult Conference in 1976.
Really?
Our roots go back to, in my relationship with my spouse, to the CME Church when we were at the Riverside Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee.
Was that the one where Roberta Flack performed? Do you recall?
I'm not sure.
Not sure. Well,
I'm not sure if
I heard she performed at one, but that's
yeah,
so.
It might have been. And incidentally, Roberta Flack used to be the organist at Israel many years ago.
She was the organist at Israel.
Yeah, she was the organist at Israel. That's
Okay.
that's another.
That's going to be another show. Okay.
Yeah, that's another show. We're trying to get her back to come in, but she's a little ill right now, and her, all of her advisors say that she cannot participate as she used to. But the former part of that question is, my children are all young adults. They are doing exceptionally well in the business world. My youngest, who's 26, is a marketing executive. My middle daughter just got a major promotion and is very high level, GS level in the federal government, working directly under the Department of State with the Secretary of State in that same building, major promotion. My oldest daughter just got a major job in the city of Atlanta, now in a supervisory role of all the schools. And all of that came through the CME Church leadership. So I believe, Dr. Mason, that if we put forth the effort, our children can continue to thrive. And let me say, incidentally, all of them are still CMEs. And I know there's a great migration away, but we have to do our level best to keep our children in the CME Church. My oldest daughter, where I'm broadcasting this right now because I haven't gotten back to DC yet. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now at my oldest daughter's home. And that's an honor to be in my oldest daughter's home. And she's a member of Westside CME Church with Dr. Lloyd. So we've been trying to practice what we preach at home, and we try to practice what we preach at church by doing all that we can with our young adults, and by allowing them to have the forums that they need, to have the workshops that they need, and to spend time with pastor at Buffalo Wild Wings playing video games. which I've done from time to time, and bowling and doing all those things.
Yeah.
So we try to keep it real, keep it fun, but keep it business as well.
That's a great segue to this next question about the bishop of the church being a pastor's pastor. Why or why not? And if you are elected, talk about your plan for pastors to, engage in spiritual, emotional, physical, and financial health. I'm sure Buffalo Wild Wings is a nice boost. I'm a Hooters man myself. They have better wings, I think. But really, talk about, and all of that. What kind of bishop will you be if you're elected, Dr. Helton?
That's a question that I've been pondering, Dr. Mason. I'm a pastor. Make no bones about it. And if elected, I would be a pastor's pastor. I love the administrative aspects of the church. My doctorate of ministry degree that I ascertained exactly 30 years ago next month was in leadership development in the CME tradition. And I published that book over 30 years ago and had it copyrighted. I would be a bishop that has the pastor's heart at the highest level in my mind. One of the things that a bishop has to understand generationally what that decision of an appointment will be, because you're going to affect generations. I spoke to a pastor that was hurt in 1970. And he spoke to me not too long before he died, about 10 years ago. And he said, Pastor Helton, I'm just now being able to talk about it. He developed a drinking disorder because of an appointment move. So I understand it. A bishop affects generations, and I will be a bishop that has that understanding. All of my pastoral assignments, Dr. Mason, have been over 800 miles apart. Each church that I have pastored, we had to have a semi-church truck to move. My wife had to quit her job. I had to displace each of my children in school. I understand inherently all of that is involved. And I would bring that full level of understanding into each pastoral appointment. I understand what it involves and what it entails. And I would do my level best as a seasoned pastor to bring all of my pastoral instincts to bear when it comes to making those types of appointments, and would be in much consultation with colleagues at that highest level, with presiding elders, and even with perhaps parishioners. I heard my bishop say something, Bishop Walker, who I highly respect. We were talking about appointments once, and Bishop Walker commented to me that you have to marry not only someone with the educational background, perhaps, but you have to understand that church's personality, and whether or not that church personality can accept a particular personality. So it's much deeper than education. It has a lot of other factors with it that a bishop has to weigh out in making those level of appointments, because, as I mentioned earlier, it will affect generations.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Nduho, how might you reimagine the church in regions experiencing financial decline like the 9th District, over which you may preside if elected?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is to sit down with your elders to make a thorough financial assessments. And then you cannot bury your head in the sand. One thing that I understand very well as a pastor, it takes years to become a pastor. You may be the preacher in charge, but you are not the pastor in charge until the people allow you to become their pastor. And if you go to a particular region that is experiencing financial decline, I think a bishop needs to understand the systems that are in place that allow for that to take place. You cannot effectively change something unless you understand that which you are attempting to change. So one of the things I would do is to really try to understand systematically what has gone on in a particular system. When you come into a local church, some local churches have been in decline for years, but you can't go in there and change everything overnight. You got to first find out what's going on. So that's one of the first things I would do, is to find out what's going on and to try to come together with the leaders collaboratively and see how we can best address this issue, and not say that this doesn't exist. You can't do that as a pastor. You can't park anywhere emotionally. You have to be resolute and come in there with an idea that we can make this work. And if we have to make some tough decisions, sometimes you have to make the tough decisions as a pastor. And I would carry over that same resolve into an Episcopal district. Tough decisions have to be made, and tough people make tough decisions.
Thank you, Dr. Helton. Let's talk about the work in Africa. And if you're elected and are assigned to Africa, how you would approach and your vision for the work there with our wonderful brothers and sisters over in the motherland, as we like to say.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Mason. I visited the 10th Episcopal District. I met some of the leaders there, one who's running for bishop, AJ Ajaya, I met and spent quality time with when I was in the 10th Episcopal District. There is a need for resources in the continent, on the continent of Africa. They need us. And here's something that you really don't understand, you don't see. We need them. I had the strangest feeling when I was in Africa. I had the feeling of a collective ethos, if you will. I felt like I was home. And I needed that. I needed them to help complete me. So we need to see that there is a cooperative ministry that is at work in Africa. Number one, this is not just something that we're doing for them. We need to see how they can help us as well. Also, we need to, I think we ought to see how we can help persons from our area go over there and to experience what I experienced. Then we can help see, as one of the presidents of the United States said, that those are S-hole countries. It's not. That's our birthland. That's our area. We need to go over there and be ministered to from them, and let them be ministered to by us. We need to give resources. And I think we need to help as many of our constituents here who may not can afford, because it's expensive to travel. I'd like to see if we can develop some resources to allow some persons who may not be able to afford to go over there the opportunity to go. Also, I'd like to see how we can build more schools. I was fortunate to help Bishop Carter finance a school over there. He sent me back a picture of a school. I didn't name it after myself. My ego is not that fragile. My wife and I named it the Way of Excellence School. And Bishop Carter sent us a picture back, amen, of the logo of the Way of Excellence School. So we need to help them educationally, help them develop schools over there, and then develop some resources where they can come back here and be educated as well.
Thank you, Dr. Helton. Let's talk a minute about the apportionment and assessments. And the question that comes is, what is your realistic plan on assessments, especially for those churches who for years have declined in their membership?
Well, can I be very honest?
Please.
My home church, some of the viewers may be there in my home church. I don't mind calling names. My home church, I think, fits that bill. And I think that we really need to look at what we need to do to help those churches who are experiencing decline, take a better look at themselves. And some of them may be on life support. They're not dead, but they may be on life support. And we can save those churches if we go back to your former question, Dr. Mason, if we be very, very strategic in pastoral assignments, because those churches need pastors who are going to be present and who are going to understand what it takes to bring back that church, what it takes to help that church in its decline, like the question that Pastor Nduho asked for an Episcopal region. The same thing applies to the local church. The local church, you have to come in there and you have to look at what has been going on. How did it get this way? And then begin to assess what is needed. One of the things that you really have to have is vision. The lectionary text for today came out of Acts chapter 16. And Paul had gotten a call from Macedonia. And that Macedonian call was specific. It gave him a vision. But then also, Paul had other persons. If you break down that text, Paul had other persons helping him to carry out that vision. So we need to develop leaders that can see that you can't do it alone. You need to develop leaders within that local church and know that it's not going to be overnight, but it can be done. And then you have to be like Paul did in our text today. Paul was about prayer. And when he was over in Philippi, they went out to a place of prayer. The church must return to prayer. I know that may sound too spiritual for some, but it's not. We must return to prayer. It was through prayer that the church was birthed, and it's going to be through prayer that the church is maintained. Now, we can put all the other strategies we want in there, but we can't leave prayer out. We can't leave fasting every now and then out. We can't leave spiritual discipline out if our churches are going to survive.
Thank you. And your final question before you give your closing statement. There have been a number of questions in the post, and I encourage all of you all this evening to spend some time, I hope, going through the CME Church page, the YouTube page, and when we were colored, looking at some of the comments. But is there a divide between the lay and the pastor? I'm sensing, looking at some of the questions, that the lay feel left out of the conversation as it relates to the church. What's your take on it? And as a bishop, what do you do to assure and to strengthen the relationship between the lay and the entire church?
Well, I think for anyone to feel that that there is a separation, I think is an ill-advised person. I think largely my success as a pastor has been because I understand that dynamic between lay and clergy. There was a book written, Dr. Mason, when I was doing my D-Min. It's outdated now. It was written by Anne Rawthorne. And in the book, she talked about the misconception of the lay. And she said in that book that 99% of our churches are lay people. 99% of the church is lay. I get that dynamic. I understand it. So there's not a divide with me. And whomever has that kind of conception is sadly led down the wrong road. We must work cooperatively between clergy and lay. To divide it, we will fall. I don't have a top-down mentality. I'm not a micromanager. My style of leadership is extremely intentional. There is nothing unintentional about Ricky D. Helton's leadership style. I am a cooperative leader. I work with people because I know you cannot get anything done if you don't work cooperatively. So we need to do whatever we can to debunk that myth, Dr. Mason, that there is a divide that exists. And one of the ways we can do that is by having some workshops, perhaps. I know we say we don't want a lot of workshops, and I agree with that, but we do need to spend some time developing an understanding that we are in this together. Perhaps a lot of our decline has been because we have all these silos in our churches. You have this lay silo over here, this clergy silo over here, and we're not working together. One of the key roles as a pastor is to come into a church and not be the pastor of one segment of the church. I don't pastor one segment. I pastor my entire church. And no one can say at any church that I've ever pastored, Dr. Mason, that I pick and choose. I don't. I'm an equal opportunity pastor. And I think as a bishop, that same thing needs to happen within the lay department and within the clergy. We need to foster good communication, beginning at the local level to debunk that myth that there is a divide. And by strengthening those lay and clergy relationships, it should not be an adversarial thing in our churches. We should not. I like strong leadership. I told someone yesterday, I like strong personalities. Amen. Because they allow me to be strong with them. Amen. And if we can allow persons to be themselves, then we can all grow together and be the denomination, be the local church that God is calling us to be. We need not be intimidated by one another, but come, let us reason together, and that we might be the local church that God is calling us to be, and that we might be the denominational church that God is calling us to be. And I'm just foolish enough to believe that that God can do it through each one of us if we believe. Now you're muted, Dr. Mason. I can't hear you.
All right. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you so much for that response. What we want to do is to give you an opportunity to make your closing statement to the delegates who are watching, to the stakeholders who are watching as well. Before you do that, I do, out of deference to my dear commission member, Dr. Pat Haynes, and you may want to include this in your closing statement. She asked the question, would you agree that pastors need organizational theory and development, leadership ought not to be top down? I at least wanted to acknowledge that I saw her question as we are prepared to close you out. You may want to address it as you close, but if not, we'll certainly try to get that question answered going forward.
I don't mind answering that question. And
okay,
she's really marching down my road. I am a systems theorist. I make no bones about it. I am a systems theorist. I believe in nurture as much as I believe in nature, and perhaps I believe in more nurturing than I do nature, because I think that systems determine a lot of our personality. At my local church, I do my best to understand the system that is involved. You know, my favorite theorist is Edwin Friedman. If Dr. Bishop Brown is watching, I'm sure he is amused at that. He wrote a book called Friedman's Fables that I absolutely live by. And the United Methodist Church uses Edwin Friedman's theories in their psychological development for their pastors. And I think we need to understand that systems theory and system development is crucial to our understanding of who we are as pastors, as to who we are as leaders. Decisions are made many times. You can trace them to a point of origin, and many times those origins have to come back to play with a system that person may have come out of. And so when you understand a person's system, where they have come out of, then you can understand that leader. You can understand that person, that lay leader or a pastor, or even as bishop, because all of us are human. So I do believe in organizational theory. I think there has to be a balance with that. You need to understand how theory comes into practice, creating praxis. And when you can understand and merge those two, you can put a thread in everything that we've talked about, Dr. Mason, from Africa to Episcopal regions being declined, to churches being declined, to young adults and youth. If you understand systems, you can put a thread in all the conversations that we've had today, and you can string along a common understanding for how we can develop our denomination.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please take a couple of minutes now to give your closing thoughts. I'd like to, at the very end, bring the other two candidates back up if they are available as we close out. But this time is yours now to give your closing thoughts and to make your case to the delegates and stakeholders as to why they should elect you as bishop in Cincinnati.
First of all, Dr. Mason, let me say, I am not perfect. And I'm saying that as a preface to say what I'm getting ready to say. I am not perfect. I make no bones about it. I've been married for 35 years to the love of my life, whom I met at the National Youth and Young Adult Conference. My children would tell you, I am not perfect. I strive to be the best father and now grandfather that I can be. But let me say this, I am financially and morally conscientious. Now, people can put whatever they want to put to that. I'm not perfect, but I try to be financially and morally conscientious. A person who desires the office of a bishop, amen, should first prove it at home. And I try to prove that at home by being the best husband that I can be, the best father that I can be, grandfather, the best pastor that I can be, the best leader in the community that I can be. One of the pastors in Washington, D.C., I didn't happen to make one of the ecumenical meetings, and I'm scheduled to preach in a citywide forum this coming Wednesday in Washington, D.C. One of the pastors called me and said, Ricky, you went at this last meeting, but we want to make sure you're a part of this, this grant that we all have written. And so they cued me in, and I wasn't even at the meeting to make sure that I was a part of that grant. And we were able to get all of the air purifiers for our church absolutely free, amen, through grants that the ecumenical leaders of our community in Washington, D.C. put in. And I'm saying all that to say this, that when people respect you, Dr. Mason, they will follow you and they will help you out. So I try to be the most morally and financially conscious person that I can be. Also, my roots go down way down deep in the CME Church. My great-great-grandfather, whose only tombstone is a rock across the street from my home church, A.W. Wallace. And our family reunion is the Wallace Johnson reunion. It's not Helton reunion, because my roots go back way past the name of Helton. A.W. Wallace started my home church, he and a few others, in 1888. They started under a brush arbor. And they have one depicted in front of the Oakland Chapel CME Church right now in front to remind us where we come from. And the old well, when I was a little boy, where we used to get water from, is still there. My roots go down way deep into CME Church. I have nothing to prove or to sell as a pastor. And I will have nothing to prove or to sell as a leader, as a future bishop. I'm not going into the office of bishop looking for an identity. I don't have that need. I lost that need a little while ago. I am responsible ecclesiastically. I'm responsible in my home. I'm a responsible person. I can return to every last church that I have ever pastored. I can return through the front door of all of those churches. And they even had some of them to ask me about returning back. I'm a servant leader, Dr. Mason, with a pastor's heart. I love pastors. I understand the dynamic of pastors. I understand the importance of making appointments. And I would pray that I would be resolute in making those appointments and to make those with the best of my ability. I'm a team builder. And finally, I want to say this. We've just completed, as I mentioned, a major renovation at the church. We have multi-purposed our building to allow our building to create income for our church. So much so that we're renting out our church to a Jewish congregation. And I was able to work with that rabbi in this young burgeoning congregation who I serve with in an ecumenical capacity in the city of Washington, D.C. And I was able to convince him and his congregation and our congregation to have them to give all the money up front for 1 year's rent. And we were able to use that money to renovate a portion of our church, which is beautiful right now. And they're going to start July 1st of this year. And that part paid for the church renovation of that segment. That was phase 2. And it will continue to pay in years to come. And it's enough to cover all of our assessments every year for the life of that particular lease. And I hope and pray that the church would always, and I told them this at the last church conference, would always recognize the power of that. And so I think we need to utilize our church resources, our buildings, to help create positive and alternative income streams for our church. So I'm ready for this position because I've proved it at my local church. And if you don't believe me, I dare you to come and visit Israel Metropolitan CME Church in the future, and you can see for yourself. We've continued on this long, rich history, and we are trying to do our level best. So a vote for Ricky D. Helton, Dr. Mason, would be a vote to do what I'm already doing right now. For more information, you can go to my website at rickydhelton.com and see for yourself and glean for some more information. And you can see from whence I've come to where I am now on my website. Thank you, Dr. Mason, for this opportunity. And it has been a pleasure.
Thank you, Dr. Helton. I appreciate that. Let me bring Dr. Haynes back up and Dr. Heath. I know it's been a long day. If you preached today, I know you're tired and worn out, but you've been so generous with your time. And I know that the people who are watching appreciate it because I'm reading in real time the comments. They are listening. they are watching. They are praying, and will be in Cincinnati to make a prayerful decision. So I just wanted to share again these candidates, aspirants, and preachers of the gospel. Again, let me share their websites with you for additional information. www.ckheathforbishop.com for Dr. C.K. Heath. For Dr. Haynes, www.haynesforbishop.com. And for Dr. Helton, www.rickydhelton.com. So check them out if you have not already. And I'm certain that you will be very pleased with what they have. God bless you, my brothers. I look forward to seeing you in Cincinnati in how many days? 34 days. God bless you.
34 days.
34 days. Yes,
Dr.
indeed.
Skip, you
yes,
owe all of us a Happy Meal. I just want to remind you that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Boy, hey, Charlie, that line's going to be real long. Okay. I mean, it's going to be long, but I'm game. I do owe you a Happy Meal.
Amen.
Thank you, my brothers. I appreciate
Thank you, Dr. Mason.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
very much.
Blessings to you all.
God bless you all.
Amen.
And like I said, next week, no show. Hopefully I'll have this camera fuzzy picture repaired. But join me on the 5th of June for my next candidates forum with Dr. Holloway, Dr. Keys, Reverend Lester, and Reverend Lou. And then on the 12th with Reverend Henderson, Reverend Anders Modest, Dr. Washington, and Dr. Williams. God bless you. I know the Connection of Young Adult Ministry is doing something as well tonight. And if you got any energy, tune in as they have a forum on the general conference as well. I'm Skip Mason. God bless you. Have a great day and a great week. Go in love and peace until we are together again.